So, is the OneXFly any good? Oh wait, you asked if it was good, not if it was pretty, huh?
I wanted to play Counter-Strike, but it says it has 40 minutes. So we're actually going to skip that. Zoo, Zoo, if you can show off some FPS in your video, I'm going to mail this to him first thing.
Chances are you may be going back and forth between devices, more and more confused about which one to get. Here's my promise to you. By the end of this, you'll be equipped with data to evaluate if the OneXFly is for you or not. If you have questions you feel you'd need me to elaborate on, don't hesitate to jump into the comment section. I'll answer in a heartbeat. With this video, my prime objective is showcasing how it feels, what it enables as a gaming handheld PC, what it excels at, and what it lacks, especially in this rapidly growing scene of portable devices. We'll start with external components, then internals, then pros, cons, the overall experience, and of course what gaming on it feels like, followed by my conclusion of the OneXFly. And surely I've got a lot to tell you. This device is one that has me quite polarized, but not to worry, I'll leave no stones unturned as to why. Starting with the body, sporting a 7-inch 1080p 120Hz IPS portrait panel, this bad boy is visually striking. It has the usual set of gamepad buttons and bonus customizable M1 and M2 keys. Both analogs are Hall sensors with fantastic reliability, virtually no drift, and no dead zones. It has a dedicated return to desktop button, a must-have specifically on devices without a keyboard, as well as two other buttons that, while not customizable, will serve to provide a more cohesive experience and will address their functionalities shortly. The front also features some of the tastiest RGB flavors we've seen. Not only do these sticks look glorious, it also sports custom engraving, which OneNetbook will happily customize for a fee. I decided to keep mine as is, but you could have your name, a moniker, whichever floats your boat. The only side you'll catch the OneXFly looking plane is behind. You'll still find the air intake, which do have a unique flair by being slanted, a fun little detail. The top sports a power button, two volume buttons, a 3.5mm jack with headset support, a USB-C sporting the full USB 4 protocol including video out and eGPU support, and last a USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 port. Of course, you'll find shoulder buttons. OneXFly cut no corners by including Hall sensors triggers for improved readings, no dead zones, and overall reliability. And last, at the bottom is another full USB 4 USB-C, a micro SD 4.0 reader, aka fastest speed cards currently available are fully supported, and two bottom firing speakers, as well as an in-body microphone. I must say, this device is devilishly good looking. Its curves are sexy, never dull, and that RGB is quite exquisite. As a bonus feature, it doesn't even need a kickstand to hold upright. I mean, all right, next is the innards. Of course, that depends on the configs, but OneNetbook opted exclusively for 7840Us, varying from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes of RAM of the usual LPDDR5X 7500 mega transfer per second that we find usually bundled with the APU. Lastly, up to 2 terabytes of storage, but bigger configs did exist during the campaign but are no longer listed. You'll find a 48 watt-hour battery, which, considering the compact nature of the device, is pretty impressive. I'd wager that they didn't waste a millimeter in there. It weighs 580 grams and the weight dispersion is flawless. Next to a Steam Deck, holding the OneXFly feels like two different weight classes despite having less than a 100 gram difference. It offers rumble motors, intelligent cooling, a 6-axis gyro sensor, supports Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.2. So that pretty much sums it up. Let's move over to the pros. Fair warning, the list is long. First is the panel. It is breathtaking. The colors are vivid but not overexposed. The responsiveness is top tier. The small bezels design make the unit feel like it's mostly all screen and really is just a super duper, hyper well-tweaked panel. That's the kind of thing I'd expect from Ioneo, but dare I say, OneNetbook just one-upped everyone but ASUS. Although, while they did lose to the Ally, the reason are not what you may think, but we'll address that shortly. It'll be interesting to compare it to the Kun and Legion Go when I receive these devices for review. To make sure not to miss a thing, hit that sub button and consider letting me know in the comments which upcoming device you are most excited for. The face buttons are 75% great, 25% good. Allow me to explain. The only button I have just a small gripe with is B. For some reason, it feels a bit more stiff than the others, but believe me when I say I'm nitpicking, and ultimately all the face buttons are in the pros list, so that should tell you what you need to know. They, as well as the D-pad, are membrane, giving that retro feel while keeping excellent responsiveness, and fighters play great on this device. The D-pad also has a nice center pivot that lands nearly flush with the body. Pulling out Hadoukens on this device is as good as it gets. We are entering personal preference territory, but for me that D-pad is S tier in feel. However, the placement is not designed around a significant focus on retro gaming, but I firmly believe it to offer good enough ergonomics to clock long hours while using this directional cross. So in the small form analog sticks world, my new favorite comes from the RP2S, partially because they are concave, but right next to them and almost neck and neck is these sticks. At first glance, they look like Joy-Con ones, but other than being Hall sensors, they are also larger circumference, ultimately providing a feel that is somewhere between a large and a small stick. In fact, I'd argue that OneXFly has brought sticks that I would classify as mid-sized, and I have decided that for Christmas, I hope every gaming handheld manufacturers follows in ASUS and OneXFly's footsteps. Be gone with the small sticks, be gone. The shoulder buttons further send the point of great controls home. L1 and R1 have wide surfaces and can provide a satisfying dome switch click from anywhere you push them, and triggers are wide. Have a bit of an upper lip, are stiff enough that you can rest your fingers on them and not be concerned with accidental pushes, but also not so stiff that your response time would be impacted. A perfect balance. I'm hearing myself and it sounds as though this device is perfect. Please hold off, we'll get to the cons, but yes, it's that good. ETA Prime said these were the best speakers he heard on the handheld. My opinion is different, but I get it. I don't believe they've made either the Steam Deck or Rogue Ally have weaker offerings in comparison, but I am personally, for the very first time, hearing sound that I'm comfortable with saying is on par with the other two leading devices when it comes to sound reproduction. It is loud, it is clear, the highs are distinct, so are the lows. Mids are clean, but ultimately, while the sound profile is different than the other two devices I've just named, I finally, for the first time, believe that Samsung's Harman were giving good quality drivers to work with and tweak for this device. I'm big on sound, and usually my reflex is to expect a compromise, but I'm happy to report that I have not in any way with this handheld. As for performance, you may be familiar with this chipset by now. The 7840U and 780M are phenomenal, and while the lower wattage performance of the Steam Deck remains impressive and can't be dethroned, you have ultimately more flexibility overall with the OneXFly, and really you are getting the absolute best that the gaming handheld market has to offer, so there is no reason to fret. The Fox covered a piece of content going over what we should expect from the next chipset, the 8850, which I greatly recommend watching if you haven't. I'll put it up there if you want to bookmark it for later. Now, don't let FOMO from future unreleased tech set in with this chipset. It deserves your money and it deserves it now. Another pro is the overall feel of the shell. I realize it sounds far-fetched, but cheap plastic just does not feel the same, or sometimes it's not so much that it is cheap, but rather it is not the best material for the designed purpose. Not only did Netbook made excellent and conscious choices, they even list a feature from the paint used that apparently has antimicrobial qualities. Whether that feature is as efficient as they claim or not, it implies that they did invest in research and development and spent legitimate time finding a superior option, or at least a cohesive solution for consumers, and one that I have not seen any other brand do before them. As always, Rumble is a feature I make sure to let viewers know I particularly enjoy, and again, this gaming console does not disappoint. The best way to describe what I mean is by using gamepads. Even before HD Rumble, first-party gamepads have provided motors that can simulate a different degree of rumble. Oftentimes, third-party controllers do not offer that depth and rather have a solution that feels rather monotone. Just like a colored film turned sepia, it's not that it'll never work, but if that was the only option, it would get old pretty quick. I apologize for the long detour, but I think it will illustrate how the OneXFly provides motors that gives you a colorful rumble experience. I don't think it's the only device to do that, but it's rather shocking to the point that after many years of experiencing gaming handhelds, it's just not what you come to expect. And then you have a software that brings it all together in such a clean fashion. If it'd be the first time you'd own a OneNetbook device, you'd probably ask yourself just, who are these guys? Because clearly they came to play. The software is not as feature-packed as what you find on the Rogue Ally, but it is elegant and well conceived from a navigation standpoint, and every utility that is there just works. No fuss, no bloat, just what you need to operate this as best you can. First is the bottom left desktop button is all there is to it. Very important, but also very straightforward. The bottom right ones are where the magic happens. First is the very far right one. It essentially is similar to GPD's mouse gamepad switch, but this one requires a long hold to toggle on off for gamepad or mouse plus keyboard mode. When it's on, an orange LED comes up, and when it's off, it's off. Pretty straightforward. The other button brings out the OneXPlayer sidebar. While I won't go over everything in there, know that this is highly efficient and easy to navigate, and that you'll spend a fair amount of time in there to change TDP, activate features such as a performance overlay, change your resolution, adjust the vibrations, etc. Everything is very easy and simply to follow. Oh, and that little black hand on some icons, that means you can long press to bring out a contextual menu with more features. But the magic is when you long press the button that brought us to this sidebar. What it'll do is open up the launcher of OneXPlayer. The launcher is decent, does a great job overall, captures quick game information as well as game artwork. There is better out there, but if you can't be bothered, as I am, with a launcher, that one serves well. I just boot my game from the software I get them from. The fun part for me is the tab called Program Controller. You can adjust everything. And when I mean everything, it's as crazy as making your start button your D-pad up key if that's what you want. If you are familiar with the capabilities of the Rogue Ally customization software, such as the second mode or turbo function, you essentially have the exact same here, but the difference, and maybe it's coincidental, but for me, the OneXPlayer software was less tedious to use, more responsive in general, and less likely to run into hiccups where the software seems to glitch out only to become responsive again after 15 seconds or so. As I reiterate, your experience may differ, but for me, the OneXPlayer has been superior on day-to-day basis, possibly by keeping features to a minimum and focusing on useful ones. Also, it has no bloatware like the Rogue Ally has. Oh, and before I forget, this is also where you'd go to update the OneXPlayer software, which I greatly recommend doing, at least for a specific reason that we'll talk about before the end of this review. Something also worth noting is that this device does a rather fantastic job with heat overall. I'd say the only way you'll feel the device being warm is if you put your hand right in front of the vent. Anything else feels stable and well under control. I also have not come to experience any throttling due to temperature, nor have I had my hands cook while holding it, not even get warmer. As for the overall sound of the fan, I want to manage expectations. If you were to hope for zero fan noise like you would on a Switch. That's not the case here, or on any handheld PC for that matter. But I also have yet to use headphones on this one. I don't need them, which I usually do, and I don't have to blast this thing at 100% to drown out the fan noise. Even 50% is usually enough for me. All in all, what you would hear is never to a point that it would disturb you, but if you were to ask me, can I put it through its paces while the wife is sleeping next to me and she's extremely sensitive to sound? I'd say the couch is probably where you're headed next. Or that it's time to finish that Hollow Knight game that you've been putting off for months. And last, before moving to cons, I quickly addressed it earlier in this review, but the ergonomics are a massive success on this device. However, I would say this and it might help you understand better. I include myself in this statement. The internet sure had its fun at AOKZOE's baby cradle in the mother's womb sales pitch. Funny enough, I find the OneXFly feels extremely close to the AOKZOE A2 and Geek in that regard. And maybe AOKZOE's marketing worked after all. I'm not saying it's identical, but it feels obvious enough where the inspiration is from, and let me tell you, it works. I'd say it works better due to an overall more compact format, less bezels, and overall lighter total package. Now for the cons, I've been lying to you guys. I keep saying cons, but really I should say con. I promise I tried to find more, and the only way I was going to have two cons to make it plural is by making one of them that the device is not free. I don't like when greatness has a cost. Free stuff just doesn't exist. Actually, if I were to ask you to consider putting a like on this video, that would be free, wouldn't it? But back to the con, which is the reason why I said earlier that ASUS wins in terms of panel. While absolutely tweaked to perfection, it does have one letdown, and no, it's not VRR. This device only has one resolution, one refresh rate. 1080p 120Hz. Arguably, there is no con in there per se, but being the only option you have by default, and the device is known to be designed around being resolution and frame rate conscious for motives such as battery life or performance, not having them is a letdown. Now, there are solutions to this, but some of them are not obvious. The frame rate is fairly simple using the software. It requires very minimal work, but once you are set up, it's a solution one can use, but know that it has its downsides. I understand 120Hz on these handhelds are questionable for some people, but for me, battery life comes second to greater experience, and who says higher refresh rate says higher panel responsiveness paired with lower latency. That's not what I call a trade-off. But the resolution, yeah, that's not good. However, a YouTuber user by the name of Handheld, I said it in a French way, it sounds French, maybe it's not, anyways, brought a very valuable piece of information to my attention. Originally, I had a video showing you step by step how to fix the issue, but as it turns out, OneXFly have put out a video a month earlier with an easy fix, which I'll put up there, another one to definitely bookmark. I have since applied the fix and removed my video as it was no longer relevant, and indeed, I can now change resolution without issues at all. There is one more thing about the panel which I do not consider a con per se, but it's something you should know. This panel is a portrait type, meaning that it is manufactured vertically rather than horizontally. I personally prefer portrait panels because of the way pixels refresh. So a vertical panel, when turned sideways, it means that these scan lines are going to be from bottom to top, then left to right, or from top to bottom and right to left. The reason why that is great for modern day gaming is because of how we are built. Our eyes capture more information horizontally, and we also scan much faster as well. Scan lines that appear to be vertical are far less perceptible. It's not that they don't exist, they are just extremely hard to spot with the naked eye. And not only that, the actual surface of the panel is a lot narrower, which also helps making us feel as though they are not present, even when they are. Dang, does this mean I have no personal con with this device? Like, I'd love to tell you that I'm disappointed because I wanted a kickstand on it, that I wish it had front-firing speakers, or maybe I would have preferred having VRR after all, but then I ask myself, would that make the device any better than it already is? I sincerely do not believe so. It holds up right on its own, so no kickstand needed. The speakers sound so clear that it's inconceivable to think they are not front-firing, and VRR is good to prevent skylines, which I have yet to see, and I have put this thing through its paces. So in the end, as my con is no longer, I'll give you a bonus pro that was not listed anywhere. In the last OneXFly software update, OneNetbook added a feature that was never listed anywhere nor mentioned as far as I'm concerned. However, they do have a video on their channel at this point in time addressing it. That is something like 8 or 9 days ago as of the making of this video. Ever heard about AOKZOE's feature called SoundTap? That makes Rumble vibrate to audio rather than using Rumble data? Out of the blue, they added that feature to their software update. But the big difference is no one paid a premium for it. They just added it. Like, wow. You should give it a try if you have the OneXFly. On occasion, it does wonders for your gaming, especially retro gaming. And I can also state that they have brought a superior implementation versus AOKZOE's. For starters, you do not need to use the in-body audio channel for the feature to work, so you are free to use headphones or not, and when enabling the feature, you can even play without sound at all, and it'll still read the frequencies and send them to the Rumble motors. Oh, and OneNetbook, if ever you see this review, it'd be amazing if you could let us customize the hertz range, as it works better with lower frequencies, I find. Look, I never thought I'd be writing this kind of review, and sure, some parts may come off as subjective, but honestly, I can't fault the device for not having a keyboard. That's like saying I knock a snowboard for not having wheels. That's a design decision as far as I'm concerned, and the software solution by this company are amongst the best I've seen. So ultimately, the OneXFly officially has become my favorite PC handheld of all time. And for me, that felt impossible to say because a keyboard is usually a deal breaker as far as being my favorite, but somehow they managed to deliver such a well thought out product that I don't care for it as much anymore. I'll set it up once and just game on it at this point, because I have a hard time seeing how competitors can make as convincing a package as this. I'm more than happy to take on the challenge, hence why I equip myself with devices that have very different things to offer. But yeah, this is now officially the Olympics of gaming handhelds, and they need to be putting out their best because it just got really fierce. I can play it in the car, laying in bed on my back, sitting down on the couch while having some personal time in the bathroom. I can grab it with one hand and have no fear of dropping it because it's so well balanced. No more, no less than the best damn portable gaming handheld I've owned. And really, of all companies, I wouldn't have bet that OneNetbook was going to deliver that high quality of a device. So you can imagine how long and hard I've considered concluding this video. First, I want to raise attention to what is a reflection of the general consumer opinion of OneNetbook in this handheld PC scene. The Indiegogo campaign ended with less than $500,000 US, and in my opinion, it's an absolute shame that this device did not sell many millions. After having laid hands on at least 15 different, if not more, handheld PCs in the last couple of years, I consider myself well versed on what defines top contenders in this space, and this device sitting next to me is undoubtedly one of them. With devices engineered as brilliantly as this one, I would urge people to not look past OneNetbook. And look, I'll be the first to admit, I wasn't always impressed with their options. I even had a warranty situation with one of their Intel-based handheld that resulted in collecting dust. And Maybe I'm completely off track here, but I can't help but notice that their campaigns have done less and less on Indiegogo. And I don't think it's just a funny coincidence. I got pestered with ads during the OneXFly campaign, so from where I stand, I know they tried. But as early on in my tech YouTuber career as I am more than comfortable putting the official statement out that this handheld is really one of the best, if not the best, I've experienced since the release of the Steam Deck. And for today, I'll leave it at that. Congratulations, OneNetbook, as this is not my first product purchase from your brand. I can safely say that today you have won one customer back. Me, if that wasn't obvious. Also, I'm not the only one to think it is beyond. I got to bring it with me 2 weeks ago to a well-recognized event here in Quebec where I was invited to do a live stage presentation to many hundreds of gamers on site and many more at home through streaming. I brought the Steam Deck, the Rogue Ally, the GPD Win 4, and the OneXFly, and unanimously, this device alone got more awe and questions than any other ones that I brought to the panel. It is strikingly pleasant, and in person, it is even more. Anyway, as for everybody else, if you have the cash for it, get it. I'm not going to sell you rainbows and unicorns. It was a better deal during the campaign, but if you are on the market for a device today and don't want to wait until the successor, which there better be one, then that difference can easily be justified in the fact that you'll have it to play with it now. There is little to no compromises on this device, and the only obvious one I could find, it got addressed. So yeah, this handheld is, to me, one of the most exciting of 2023 because, to me, that's the one to beat. To me, that's the one that finds a balance that others should strive for, or better yet, improve from. Hopefully, next time this device will get the love it deserves. This was Clef, and you just watched Game Tech Talk.